Sweet. Okay, so 10 weeks left of this year. And as you think about this last week, did anyone show up as a cultural leader? Like our acronym is growth, grit, results, only leaders, wealth, teamwork, and humility. Anybody that you guys want to shout out before we get started with our topics today?
Well, for grit, I'd like to shout out Christina and Charlie in Austin, completing their first 1,000 dial day. And there were a couple out of a few that we had who did that across different locations.
I love that, man. That is business building, 1,000%. Way to go, ladies. Who else has anybody to shout out this morning before we get started?
Just wanted to shout out San Antonio. While I was on the conference, I was trying to get a lockbox out to West San Antonio, and Tamala, Rob, Andrew, Veronica, they all just jumped in and it was like, okay, when do you need it? Where does it go? And so just teamwork. Thank y'all.
Right on, teamwork. And that's one of the things that I think I love most about our model and everything that we stand for is we always stand in the gaps for all of our people, because I mean, each of us is only as good as all of us together, right? And so it makes us so much stronger. Way to go, San Antonio team. Anyone else? Any other shout outs? No? Oh my, okay. Well, I want to shout out the ladies that I know that went to Amplify, who invested time and also finances into this event, and definitely working on yourself, guys, it's much easier to work on your business. I can tell you it's so much easier to work on your business than it is to work on yourself. And I don't know 100% everyone who went there, but I know Sharon was there, and I know Andrea was there. I know Elizabeth was there, and I know Alicia was there. And if I'm missing anyone, I do apologize, but shout out to you, ladies. Gosh, humility, it takes a lot of humility to work on yourself. I'm really proud of you guys. So that was awesome. And for anyone else who's interested in, if you're a female and you're interested in a conference to become better, the best version of you, actually, I am happy to, I'll post a link in the chat here for you guys, just so you can start thinking about it and start saving for it if it's something that's important to you. All right, we will continue going and rocking and rolling. And to everyone who is ready to check out what we've been doing, let's talk about Texas here for a second. Let me find what sheet my Texas stuff is on. I should probably stop sharing until I find it, right, guys? Let me find what it's on. I got home really, really late last night, so I have had quite a time. Okay, guys, I am ready if you are. So here is kind of like what's been going on in Texas, and I've got some really cool stuff to share. So last year we were at 53 agents. This year we're at 95 agents. We actually added 2 agents in the last week. So if that's you guys, like you're new to our company, welcome. This is a really, really great place with really great people. 79% increase, 16 people in launch building their career. It's really exciting. Listings. We are flat from last week, but we were actually down 3% from the same time last year, right? We were carrying 91 listings, now we're 88 listings, right? This is obviously the area that we are all interested in growing. Remember, Zillow and Open Door and all those people, they are all going after listings. They're not trying to get more buyers. They understand that if you control the inventory, you control the market. So we are definitely focused on this number. Buyer reps, you guys, definitely have, we have 430 people who have committed to working with us in writing. That's a lot of freaking people. A lot of people. So way to go on that, number one. And number two, let's get them. Let's find something that makes them happy, and let's get them into a house. Pending volume 95 million. That's a 64% increase. We actually, this is a negative number here only because we closed so much last week that we actually had less pending volume than the week before. So again, this is why we talk about the 430 buyers. We just need to move them down here. Average price point on pendings 406, very healthy. Closed units, look how close we are to that 1,000 mark, you guys. Like, have you ever thought about like being in a company that sells just in like one state over 1,000 homes? We're almost there, 949 compared to 589 same time last year. Way to go. You guys had 28 closings just last week. Closed $349 million this year so far, up 94%, because you guys closed 10 million like it was nothing. You did that last week. Gross commission income, look at that, 9.7 million is what we have closed together as a team here on this call. It's almost $10 million. It's fun because this is what drives our agent income. And that agent income is 4.85 million, so close to 5 million. We're up 102%, guys. Just last week, our agents put in their bank account 170,000. That's pretty awesome. And we're just paying out more and more and more money. And I love it. So speaking of being able to pay out more money, being able to move people from a buyer or a seller to a pending, being able to take that pending to a closing. The reason that it's just so timely is Laura Castillo is like, she texted me a few weeks ago. She's like, hey, the next time you want me to speak, I want to speak on solution-based interactions. And I was like, well, heck, that sounds like a great idea. So I am going to make Laura a co-host, and I would love for Laura, if you can speak, then I can see you.
Hey
there
there.
you are. Oh my God.
Morning.
Yeah. Good morning. You look good. All right. So you are a co-host. So for those of you who are newer to the company, maybe you don't know Laura yet, I'll give you a quick synopsis. Laura she's awesome. She's like a girl's girl, but she can hang with the guys as well. That's how I think about her. We met in an Uber because we weren't willing to walk a couple blocks in our fancy shoes. And I knew this girl was going to be my friend real quick. And yet, like, she's a tough cookie. She is an immigrant. She has worked for everything that she has. She has, if your life was hard, like, Laura can be your best friend there too, because she knows what that's like. And she is one of the wealthiest people that I know. She has built an incredible business, incredible people, incredible future for herself and her son. She's in Midland. If you've never been to Midland, she would love to host you. She's got a very nice pool. So Midland, Odessa area, and you guys have closed 1.2 million year to date. That's a very, very big business, you guys. So Laura was a team leader, a productivity coach, a top agent. So she's done a lot. She knows a lot. And today we're lucky that she's going to share it with us. So Laura, it's all up to you.
Well, good morning. I thank you for that wonderful introduction. It's a lot to live up to, so thanks. So today I wanted to speak to Adelina, or I asked Adelina to speak on this because I have encountered that a lot of transactions don't make it to the closing table for a lot of different reasons, right? There's a million reasons that transactions fall through. And yet when you start peeling the layers of the onion back, it really boils down to just a few reasons. And that's what I want to talk about today. So today we're not going to talk about the technical reasons of why transactions fall through. We're going to talk about that reason that falls behind all those technical reasons. And it might be a little hocus pocusy for some of you, or it might be a little too deep. It might be a little bit too much of holding the mirror for some of you, but I hope that it helps some of you get better at becoming solution based. One of the biggest claims that I think I make all the time to my agents is, gosh, I wish that part of the Texas licensing courses and education was teaching people how to be solution based and resourceful and pro transaction. So let me see. I will warn you ahead of time, my PowerPoint presentations are not as pretty. They're mostly there for my prompting and for reminding me of what I'm supposed to talk about. So don't even screenshot it, because this is here from me, okay? But I will share it with you just because. Let's see. And I'm also not as techie as some of these people. So give me a minute to find myself.
You're good. Don't worry. There you go.
All right, there we go. All right. So I want to just first start out by asking you guys, and this is the interactive part, I want to ask you guys, what in your head are some of the biggest reasons that transactions actually fall through? And you guys can either type them or shout them out if you want to. Just share with me some of the reasons that you think transactions fall through.
Unrealistic expectations.
Yes.
I was going to say a lot of mine. Go ahead.
Not having a thorough buyer consultation. I feel like sometimes, you know, setting proper expectations of what it's going to look like from start to finish.
Yeah.
Alicia, is your hand still up?
A lot of mine I feel like are falling through because of lending. It's like out of my hands, and 2 days before closing they find out they really can't close, and having to scramble to find a new lender or find out that they actually don't have purchase power.
I totally agree. I think the lending side is one of the biggest things that's causing things to come back to market. I think listing agents need to really vet their contracts quicker that they're accepting.
Yeah, I think that's a huge statement behind that sentence. Anyone else want to chime in before we move on?
I think sometimes either one party or both parties tries too hard to be the hero, and they kill the deal.
Yeah, I agree with you, Adelina. I think that more often than not, yes, lending is a huge reason. Yes, you know, things are out of our control. But I think more often than not in real estate, we get to what the heck? To what I call a battle of the egos between agents. And I wish that this was something that we were being taught, that the other agent on the other side of the transaction is not your enemy. Neither is the lender, neither is the underwriter, neither is the appraiser. All of these people, we need to get out of the mindset that it's a them against us type of world and get into a collaborative mindset of, regardless of whose fault it is still my commission that I don't get paid if the transaction falls through. So it is in your best interest to start getting solution-based and creative around that. So here's one big thing that I always tell my agents: always assume that everyone else in the transaction is incompetent and act as the coordinator of the transaction. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I just mean, if I'm working with 10 people, I am going to make the assumption in here and in here, I won't show it out here, that they don't know how to do their job. and that I have to make sure kindly to push them toward doing it correctly. There are too many moving parts, and ultimately it is your commission on the line if the deal falls through, regardless of whose fault it is. So that's kind of the basis of how I approach most of my training with my agents is, guys, whether you like it or not, and I know you're not a lender, but lending is part of your transaction, and you do have to learn how to communicate with those lenders, what questions to ask of those lenders, how to vet them better. Get really involved so that you know which lenders are good lenders and which ones are not, which ones have the good underwriters and which ones do not. There's a lot of things that you can control when it comes to the lending side. We are not completely helpless. And this is your transaction. You take control of it. Okay. So here's, I think, the number four, or the four things that I think I want to talk about today is ego, because I do believe that behind these transactions that fall through for technical reasons that end up being lack of skill reasons, I think behind those things, there's four really basic things that we 100% can learn to control. One is our ego. Two is lack of creativity and finding solutions. Three is a doom and gloom attitude. And four is overcomplicating issues. On ego, I will tell you this, the ego side of it is the part that tells you that you have to look good and be right all the time, that you have to get the last word in. Have you ever had a seller that goes, well, I'm a tough negotiator. I just like to have the last say in the transaction. Or a buyer that says, I just want to be the one that walks away with at least something else. And that's ego. The agent that calls you and tells you, do you know how long I've been in real estate? That's ego. The agent that tells you, well, you're not going to tell me how to run a transaction. I close like 50 transactions a month. That's ego. All of that is ego, and it does not help. Ego tells you that others are against you. Ego tells you that you have to look good and be right, even at the expense of a deal or commission. Ego tells you that you have to have the last word. The co-op agent, nor anyone else in the transaction is your enemy. You're both working together to accomplish the goal, which is close, fund, and get everyone paid. Don't lose sight of that, guys. Doesn't help you any to be the most knowing agent or the most well-spoken agent or the one that won the most fights if your bank account is empty. Money is really good for my ego, I will tell you that much. So I'm able to swallow a lot of pride if there's a big enough number behind it. Letting our ego in the way is a rookie mistake. I see it a lot. And I can spot it immediately. When an agent is combative, defensive, argumentative, etc., it's because they feel a lack of confidence. And for those of us that have been in this business for a long time and have done a lot of transactions and don't throw it in your face every transaction we get a chance to, we can recognize it. I bet Maria, Alicia, Judy, anyone who's doing a big number of transactions, I bet you any time that they get one of those agents, they just roll their eyes, or their eyes imaginatively go to the back of their head, because they can recognize that egotistical agent. But it tells me nothing more than you are lacking confidence, you are lacking skill, and you are lacking knowledge. And that is what drives most of the ego-driven conversations and interactions that you have. Lack of confidence, lack of skill, and lack of knowledge. Oh. See, this is where I repeated myself, but I'm sure there's something worth. Here's something else. Remember that you will have to work with agents again. You don't want them to have a sour taste in their mouth about working with you. I don't think enough agents treat others respectfully, at least in my area of the world. And I don't know how it is in Austin. I don't know how it is in Dallas. I don't know how it is anywhere else in Texas that you guys happen to be in. But here in Midland, in my ecosystem, there's a lot of ego and a lot of disrespect, especially for the new agents. And I don't think that a lot of those agents realize that these new agents are learning how to do real estate better than they did, and that they will have to work with them again, and that they will remember the lack of respect that you treated them with. So, and that goes also for lenders, title reps, appraisers, insurance agents. This is your whole team. Adelina, go ahead.
For those who don't have a ton of experience yet, like what's an example, or how do you butter up a lender, a title rep, an appraiser, or somebody that's on the transaction team? Like, what does that look like?
So let's say I have a short appraiser. I've seen it all. I've seen it. I've seen the agent that is terrified of talking to that appraiser because they think they're gonna, I don't know, burn him alive or something. I don't know why people are so afraid of the people involved in the transaction. But let's say you have a short appraisal and you disagree with the results, because often appraisers are overworked, at least in our area, and they miss stuff. So the first step in the process for me to fight an appraisal is to make sure I'm right? Because when I pick up the phone, I don't want to look like an idiot. So when I pick up the phone, it sounds something like this. Let's say you're the appraiser. Hey, Adelina, how are you doing? I don't know if you remember the appraisal. You do a lot, right? So the one on 123 Main Street, you remember that one?
I do.
Okay, well, I was hoping that you had just 5 minutes to visit with me about that. Are you busy, or should I call you back at another time?
No, I can do 5 minutes if it's really 5 minutes.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I'll keep it at that. So really the main question I have, and I'm not questioning your skill at all, because I know you do this more than I do, and this is what you actually do for a living. So I was just wondering, I found this comparable that was not used in your analysis. It's the one at XYZ. And I was just wondering if you could help me understand why that one was not considered.
Sure.
That's a very different tone, guys, than, well, I just think that you don't know what you're doing and you missed comp 1 ABC. It's treating that person with respect, making them right, giving them permission to make a mistake, and saying, hey, maybe you missed it, but if you didn't, explain to me and help me learn why it wasn't used. And then if he tells me and it makes sense, then I will follow it up with, okay, great. That makes a lot of sense. Just out of curiosity, is there anything that we can do to bring up value in your experience? Is there anything that would help us? Are there any pendings that you considered that haven't closed? Is there anything at all that could help us in this? Same thing for a co-op agent. You get an agent that is with a tough negotiation, same thing. Just pick up the phone, treat him with respect. Find reality. I think that that's my biggest thing, is always get in front of reality of why we're where we are sitting at right now. Does that help, Adelina?
I love that. I love that. Sarissa, do you have something?
I was just going to say, when you feel your ego creeping up, the best thing to do is just remind yourself that you're fighting for your client. You're, at the end of the day, you've got to do what is best for the client, what is help them to get what they want. Honestly, put our own money aside, because money works itself out when you do the right thing. And when you realize that, like Laura said, they're not the enemy, and that like we just have to be fighting every single day for serving our people, then the rest of it kind of works itself out, right? So I think that's the easiest way to put ego aside, is to remember that it's not about you.
And there are very physical signs when you feel ego creeping up, and that's where the hocus pocusy part gets in. I do a lot of studying on energy, and I can tell you there's a lot of physical signs of ego creeping in. When you start feeling agitated and out of breath, and upset about something, that's ego creeping in. You are no longer in solution finding mode when you start to feel this shakiness and this, like, I'm going to kill that person, or how could they do this to me? All of that is ego. On lack of creativity. Keep a neutral attitude. Your clients actually need you focused, calmed, level-headed. They can be an emotional wreck on their own. They do not need your help. Your job is to de-escalate them and redirect them to find a way forward. An example would be, Mr. Seller, we ran into a hiccup with the appraisal. This happens, and it's certainly something that we've dealt with before. We do have a few options that we can pursue. One is we can do nothing and let the deal fall through. Number two, we can try to negotiate with the buyer and meet them somewhere in the middle. Or number three, we can attempt to dispute the appraisal by starting a formal procedure. Which one would you like to proceed with? So I'm not just coming to the client with, oh my gosh, the appraisal came in low, the world is falling. No, I'm coming in with, hey, this happened, and it happens. We see it all the time. Here's some options for you. And guys, I'm using appraisals because it's just what came to my mind as I was typing this, but this happens with a lot of other things. Maybe the roof was bad, or maybe it didn't, the insurance agent went out there and said it was not an insurable property. I am so sorry if you guys can hear my dogs in the background. For some reason, they just decided they wanted to go insane today. It can happen in any point of the transaction, but I think one of my biggest pet peeves is when the agent panics and comes to me and they're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? I'm like, first of all, calm down. First of all, take a breath, calm down, and it is probably not as bad as you think it is. So use your creativity, and always, I would say, not always, there's transactions that are not salvageable, but I think 99% of the time your transactions are salvageable if you just get creative and you recruit help in, because I guarantee you, if you're going through it, someone has gone through it, and someone in the whole entire network of plays has found a solution to that particular problem that you're going through. We are very blessed by being part of such a big network with such a high number of transactions that we've probably seen most everything that you guys could encounter. So if you're a new agent and you're shaking because something is happening and you don't know how to deal with it, go first to your peers and to your leader, and then to your broker in your office, but be resourceful. Then don't just take no for an answer. This one I already went to. Here's another piece of advice that I want to give you guys, and I think that this one would solve, at least for us team leaders and for people answering your contract questions, I think this one would solve 80% of most of the questions that we get. It's read your contract and your addenda. No, seriously, like 80% of the time, the question, the concern, or the challenge that you're being faced with is already addressed in the contract. It is 12 pages for a reason. And then you have all this addenda that is attached to it, that if you have a question about most of your issues, it's probably addressed with it. And if you're having, I say 80% of the time your questions will be answered. 99% of your negotiation disagreements will be clarified if you just go back to your contract. My agents can testify to you, the first time they come to me with a contract question, what is my answer? Is anyone on my team on?
Read
What
the
does the contract say?
What does your contract say? Yeah, what does your contract say? Because stop treating your contracts like a fill in the blank piece of paper that you went to one training and filled out with one example, and then you just copy and paste that over and over. Every contract is different. Every single blank line or box that you have to fill out, it's specific to that transaction. If you did the copy and paste thing and you got a contract on one of your listings, go and read it, because the other agent, I hope, didn't. And you have unique things to this contract. So 99% of your negotiation disagreements will be answered by the contract. Don't try to be creative, be very factual about it. I answer questions of co-op agents just like that. They say, well, Laura, what about this? okay, Nancy, but what does the contract say? Well, it says this, but, well, it says that. That is the answer. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yes.
Yes.
I think, again, I will say it again, 80% of the time, most of the questions, concerns, or challenges that you're facing will be addressed by contract and addenda. 99% of negotiation disagreements can be settled by just following the contract. Doesn't matter what your client feels, doesn't matter what the other agent feels, it doesn't matter if anybody feels like they're being wrong, they signed a freaking contract. Contracts are not things that we just fill in as a suggestion of how the transaction should go. They are legal binding documents. On that, speak clearly and concisely. When you're negotiating, when you are stating a point, too many people overshare. I've gotten text messages that I'm, no joke, are this long to make one point that could have been said in 3 sentences. If your seller is going to deny a buyer's request, you don't need to go into a huge long explanation of, well, the seller just feels like they've been giving and giving and giving and giving, and they just feel taken advantage and blah, 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 blah. Nobody cares. The seller respectfully declines this request, is all you need to say. Does that help anybody?
Yes, it does.
Being succinct is part of that growth that we have, grown from beginner to knowing enough to be dangerous to like really, having our bearings, right? Like being able to be succinct, like that's a matter of confidence, I think.
Yeah, I type text a lot of times, and I will tell you, I edit them all the time. I go back and say, do I really need to send this text right now? And I would say that 9 times out of 10, when I go back and edit my text, I end up taking 2 or 3 sentences. Never do I add more stuff to my text. Sometimes maybe I forgot to say something that I needed to say, but most of the time I am taking away things that do not serve the conversation and would only overcomplicate it, because people's brains are already messy enough. You need to be clear and succinct, concise. Clear is kind. I think when you're clear, you're being kind to the other person on the other end. When there's a challenge or a problem, it is best to deliver the bad news as soon as possible. Bad news does not get better with age. It is, in my personal practice, I analyze the problem, explore the possible solutions as well as the consequences for picking a particular course of action, and then I present them all together. So just like I did with the appraisal example, if that's the problem, then I'm going to say, hey, can you send me that appraisal? I'm going to review it. I'm going to make sure that they used all the comparables that they were supposed to use, or maybe they didn't mismeasure something. And once I've analyzed it, I will come up with 2 or 3 solutions, and then I'll go to the seller and say, hey, here we are. Here's where we can go. Here are the consequences of taking one of those 3 options. How do you want to proceed? Don't ever, 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 ever speak for your clients. Go ahead, Adelina.
To Laura's point, oftentimes what I find happen, and maybe it's you, or maybe you've seen somebody in your office do this. Something happened 2 days ago, and they've been mulling it around. Like our agent has been mulling it around, has created lots of stories in that 2-day period. It has not really presented it to the client yet because they haven't figured out which story they want to present yet, right? It is a burden on their heart, their soul, their mind. They have had a horrible 2 days, right? And so to Laura's point, the best way to resolve something is to resolve it as soon as possible. Give yourself enough time. Like, don't be reactionary, right? But 2 days is not an appropriate amount of time because it will just weather you and just completely make you feel like real estate is not a great career. You will have such a sigh of relief when you have, even if it's bad news you have to deliver, you'll feel better after you deliver it. So I love this
Absolutely.
point.
Yeah, I think you just, I don't know if you've ever had to deliver bad news and you just feel horrible, can't sleep, can't eat, can't do a lot of things. And once you do, it's just like, the news didn't go away, but you got it off your chest.
Or sometimes when you deliver it, it's not even as bad as you think. Like you resolve it.
Exactly. Sometimes we horribilize things in our brains. Oh my gosh, the seller's going to freak out and they are going to fire me and they're just not ever going to refer me to anybody. And we have this horrible blown up story. And then we call the client and we go, hey, this happened. And they're like, oh, okay. So what do we do? So I also find that often realtors are so consumed by a problem because they are too attached to the outcome. So being unattached to whether it's a yes or a no will serve you best. For instance, let's say that you're asking for a price reduction, or you need to ask for a price reduction, but you don't do it because you don't want to be told no. And you're afraid that the seller is going to be upset at you or whatever. Maybe this isn't the best example, but the reality is that most sellers will appreciate a reality check as long as it's supported by data. And you don't have to care about rejection because it is not you that they're rejecting. They're rejecting maybe the fact that they can't afford that price reduction or the reality that it's not the right time for them to sell. They're rejecting something. They're not rejecting you, especially when you come backed by data that supports what you're telling them to do. So don't be attached to the outcome. Don't be so concerned with what they're going to say to you or how they're going to respond. Just ask your question, make your statement, make your point, and move forward. Here's an example. Make people write as much as you can and then state your position without attachment or emotion. An example is, I get that, Maria. Trust me, and I know it can be difficult to get a seller to come down and agree to repairs that they may feel that they've already done enough. And this is not negotiable for my client. Let's find a win-win solution. What would make your client feel like they're winning? I'll do my best to help my client see it in the best light possible. So I'm de-escalating the agent. I am saying, hey, I get you. We are not in control of clients. And I know it's hard for you to go back to your client. Just go and ask them what would make them feel like they're winning. And then I will do my best to try and present it in the best light possible to my client. Never am I critical. I'm not going to Maria and saying, well, you're just not in control of your client. You don't know how to deal with your client. No, I'm telling her, I get that. I get that clients can be difficult. Just go and ask a simple question and come back. The answer, we'll deal with it when we have it. Real estate is simple. It's not easy. Most everything has a very simple solution if you're just willing to ask anything or anyone. You have a lending problem, pick up the phone and ask the lender. It doesn't do you any good to be talking to your peers who are maybe just as new or green as you are and don't know the answers. Go talk to that lender. They are not horrible people. Call a different lender for a different opinion. If you were diagnosed with an illness, you would not just sit there and say, oh, well, I have cancer. You would go to a specialist and you would get a second, a third, or a fourth opinion. If someone tells you they can't do a loan for whatever reason, go talk to 2 or 3 other lenders. Maybe they have a different group of investors who can do that loan, or maybe that lender is not as experienced in originating loans as you thought they were. Get a second, third, fourth opinion. Find a solution. Last but not least, take responsibility for the transaction. Don't shift the blame. Even if the current problem was not your responsibility. It is your responsibility to find a way forward. This is how you get recommended. Your income is directly correlated to your ability to solve problems. And that's what I got.
I mean, I just want to punctuate that last thing that Laura said. Your income is directly correlated to your ability to solve problems, guys, right? We are in the problem solving business, and what a gift, right? Like, because it's not like pressure on us, it's pressure to find the solution, which we have a ton of resources, right? We don't have to like figure out how gravity works, right? We just have to figure out how to go to Google or how to go to our peers or our leaders, right? I love that. I love that. Income is directly correlated to your ability to solve problems. Elizabeth, I see your hand.
Yeah, I have a question. So, do you recommend like picking up the phone or texting or email if another agent is being rude or difficult on the phone? The reason, I mean, I just had one that I just could not keep my calm on the phone with her. And I found out after the transaction that she was also being incredibly rude to title and other people. So it wasn't personally to me at all. It just seems to be her personality. So I went to email and text only. Is that something you'd recommend, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think when someone has the ability to disrupt your peace, I think it's best that you find what works for you. There are things that I don't think are better said via text or email. There are things that I think you have to just bite the bullet and pick up the phone and say it, because it will not convey well via text. But if it's simple things that cannot be misinterpreted via text or email, yeah, go for it. I'm 80% text and email based because I hate talking on the phone. Regardless of whether you're nice or not, I just don't enjoy talking on the phone. So
Same.
so I think you play it by ear, Elizabeth. I think it's in it. I say pick up the phone because we've been trained so long that we just pick up the phone, right? But it could be text that agent, or it could be email that agent. I don't think email is as efficient anymore at creating flow in a conversation. So I would almost rather it be text, because you can follow up with questions faster, but that's just me. Adelina might have a different opinion on that, or Sarissa.
My only thought is sometimes, you know, when we write something, we can read it with like a negative assumption. We can assume the worst because of like the way they stated it or whatever, or because of a previous negative conversation. So that's my only thought, is like sometimes allowing because they can't see us, by allowing, what is it? Well, like an additional, do you guys know what I'm saying? Like they can now hear your voice as well as see as well as your words. We can sometimes diffuse situations by bringing a really calm and pleasant tone to a conversation, and make sure that we aren't assuming that they're actually being negative or ugly or whatever. So that's my only thought, is sometimes picking up the phone can actually cause a better solution.
Yeah, I agree, Sarissa. And also remember what I said earlier, when people are combative, rude, and all of those things, it's because they're lacking a ton of confidence. So I always try to ask myself, what can I do to contribute to making this person feel more empowered in this transaction? How can I communicate with them best to make them feel like I'm not their enemy? And some people just are mad at the world, and there's nothing you can do about it. Some people just are born that way, but more often than not, it comes from lack of confidence and lack of feeling like they're in control. So
You
I
made
just
me
kill them with
think of
kindness.
You made me think of
Go ahead.
something like the way you said you like to diffuse it. Like you could almost, I can see you doing this, and I don't know if you do, but I can see you going, oh my gosh, thank you so much for working so hard to get our clients to a good solution. I know this is difficult probably for all of us, and almost like giving them like, you're doing so good, kind of a tee up, you know?
Yeah, like
and
a pep talk.
like
Yeah.
butter them up. Yeah. So that's, I don't know if you do that, but that could work too.
So on that subject, while we're talking about it, Laura, what is an example, do you think, of when someone should pick up the phone? Because I love what Elizabeth said. And to your point, Elizabeth, man, there are some crazy people out in the world that you just can't, I mean, like nobody can handle them. It has nothing to do with you, right? Ben on a recent call called it the jerk factor, right? 2% of people are irrational and cannot ever be pleased, and you cannot have a real conversation with them. Like that is the 2% club. The 98% club is normal. So we'll talk about that. But the 2% club is the jerk factor. It comes from a book written by the Ritz-Carlton. So sometimes like that's, if just ask yourself, is this a 2%er? Maybe it's not. And if it is, then you just do whatever it takes to get that deal to closing. But on the 98%ers, what are examples, would you say, of when to pick up the phone? Because it's so easy, especially if there's a lack of confidence on our side, or maybe we grew up in a generation where we don't pick up the phone, and this is all very new to us. Conflict resolution is new to us.
For me, and this is only for me in my personal practice, anything that cannot be stated, that is not a factual statement, that needs elaboration and explanation, requires for me to pick up the phone, especially if it's a negotiation or maybe communicating a problem. Hey, we're going to have a delay in closing, and this is the reason. Especially if it requires more of a personal explanation from my clients, then it's time for me to pick up the phone. But if it's, hey, my clients are requesting repairs ABC, that's factual. Like, can't misinterpret that. Like, I'm telling you, my clients want ABC. But if I need to explain to you that we're going to have a delay because our contingency is behind a couple of days, and there's a good chance I'm going to screw that up in a text or an email. So I'm going to pick up the phone, and then I'll follow it up with an email so that we have a paper trail of the conversation.
I like that.
But that's my personal practice.
Oh, no, I like that. I like that. The only other thing I see a lot of is going back and forth over and over, right? Like after about 2 back and forths, if we're not getting to solution, it is a phone call, right? Like don't get stuck in the we went back and forth like for 4 hours and everybody's pissed off now situation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Misty?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If it's factual and it's a yes or no, it's something that can be answered with yes or no, or no, we're not going to do that, or my client is not willing to do that. If your question or your statement does not command a simple yes or no or factual response, then you need to pick up the phone.
I like that. Misty.
Well, something that helps me is just setting an expectation with, and this is in regards to the other agent and my clients, is just setting an expectation in the very beginning and asking them, how do you like to communicate? And I like to talk about that up front, typically I like to communicate by text, but if it's something that I feel warrants a conversation, then I'm going to call you. So that way it kind of sets the tone from the very beginning. And you also know how they like to communicate, because if they say they prefer to talk on the phone and you're texting them constantly, that's going to annoy them, and vice versa. If you're calling them all the time and they prefer text, then that kind of irritates people. So I think just setting those expectations up front is so helpful, so that you get to know that person from the very beginning.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Misty. I think not enough people ask that question. How do you like to be communicated with? And I wish they would, because then people wouldn't call me when they know to text me, but
I think about like everything in life comes back to setting expectation. Isn't that right? Like even like whether it's a relationship, whether it's a transaction. I had last week, I got feedback from a co-op agent on one of my great agents, that just to let me know that my agent is not doing the best job, right? And this was after the transaction. So first of all, like what can I even do at that point, right? And so, but instead of just like, like, oh, well, okay, like, thanks for sharing. I was like, well, tell me about that. Like, what was it, And they're like, that they never once picked up the phone. And I'm like, wow, like, I mean, I'm sure if my agent knew that that's the way they wanted to be communicated with, right, then they would have just picked up the phone. Like, this agent was irate that they had to do the transaction through email and text, which, like, so that is an important thing. It's kind of like being in a relationship and somebody has a love language of words of affirmation, and you keep giving them gifts. Like, they just don't receive your gift. They just don't want it. Right? They want you to say, "Hi, May, you're doing a great job. Casey, you like, God, you work so hard," right? Like, that's what they're craving. So this agent was craving a phone call, and my agent, as great as they were texting, and they were so communicative, but it was a negative, right? So interesting philosophy, Misty. I like that. Like that quite a bit. And it doesn't have to feel so formal. I could just say, "Okay, awesome. I'm so excited about doing this transaction with you, Laura. Do you prefer text or emails or phone calls when we talk?" That's easy. I'll tell you text
Yeah,
for everybody on this call.
for me, it's text. Call me when it's only 100% needed.
Awesome. Anybody else? Last call. 2 more minutes. Anything else? No. Man, Laura, that was really, really, really spectacular. Thank you so much for reminding us of that. If you would not mind to share your slide deck with me, then I would be happy to send it out with the recording of this, just to keep all of this in mind. And
Yeah, absolutely.
next week, guys, is the last Thursday of the quarter. We have made it to the end of the third quarter. We're about to start the fourth quarter. I'll have a special guest for us, and it will be so fun to think about, like, two rivers converging, right? 2021 and 2022 is coming up, and they're about to converge into quarter four, where we wrap up everything that we've done all year and we continue into the new year. And it's a beautiful time, guys. Change is always good if your mindset believes it's good, right? And so we have the opportunity to really knock it out of the park this last quarter and set up a really nice year for next year. So I'm excited about that. Wouldn't want to do it with anybody else but you guys. So thank you so much for being here this morning. Have an awesome weekend. Get some cooler weather and enjoy. Laura, thank you so much for pouring into us this morning. We'll see you guys later.
You're welcome. Have a good one.
Thank you,
Bye.
Laura.
Guys.
Thank you, Laura. Bye.